You are listening to Beyond the Checkbox, a podcast that focuses on leading strategies around bringing more mental well-being into the workplace. My name is Ryan Todd. I'm a psychiatrist and the CEO of Adversity. I'm sitting down with industry-leading changemakers to break down their process and see how they are going above and beyond for their workforce mental well-being. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Checkbox. I'm your host, Ryan Todd. And on this show, you learn about mental health and how to improve mental health in your organization from frontline leaders. Today, we have an awesome guest. His name is Robb. Robb's the leader of a massive union that looks after the trades, especially in construction. And Ian has a lot to say about the opioid epidemic in construction, how we think about it currently, some of the new methodologies in terms of treating this at a community level. Ian has a particular perspective on the systems that we create and how we could improve those systems so that we can help folks in the trades stop using opioids and live a more productive life, and how we improve that from a community level. I'm really interested in the conversation with Ian because of his experience, and the fact that he runs a massive union really helps guide a lot of credence and authority to what he's saying. So I always have time for union leaders because they really take care of thousands and thousands and thousands of people in our workplace. Thanks for joining today on Beyond the Checkbox. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about the BTA. And then let's talk about this Building Resiliency program and everything that it entails, because I think there's a lot of cool stuff to get into in terms of your industry and mental health. We actually talk about it a lot on this show, like all the issues around mental health in this industry and what we're dealing with. But like give us and our listeners just a little intro of who you are, the groups that you represent, and then what you're thinking about with this new program, Building Resiliency.
Well, who we are at the Building Trades of Alberta is 18 affiliated construction unions with approximately 60,000 members. And, we're building and maintaining and constructing the infrastructure in this province. And mental health and addiction issues is a big problem. And I call it a problem opposed to anything else because it's something that creates a lot of problems within the industry, like not just for the worker, but for the contractor, for the owners, for the construction, for the safety. It's a huge issue. Safety, yeah.
Like we've always tried to tie it into safety. And I think there's a bit of a leap, like it's sometimes a struggle to say that mental health impacts, lost time or whatever it is, or whatever indicator it is for safety. But it sounds like you're making that leap. You're comfortable with saying, hey, this is a safety issue.
Well, it is a safety issue. It's a cost issue as well to the contractor. And I mean, if you ever want to get a bunch of contractors in a room to lean in, talk about productivity. Yeah. Right. The fact that 2 in 5 construction workers have mental health issues in this country is a big deal, and 1 in 5 are in peril at this point. Right. So we need to address that because it becomes a safety issue. It becomes a productivity issue. We all know more productivity equals, a safer workplace and more money.
What's the stake that the unions have in this? Like they represent the employees, the people. Like what's their view of all this? And this has been brewing for some time, but it sounds like recently unions have been taking this more seriously.
Yeah, I mean, unions have always looked out for the welfare of their membership, and sometimes they're looking at other things. It's not all about money and benefits and all this stuff. It's got to be a safe work environment. It's got to be a healthy work environment. I mean, we all talk. The new thing is psychologically safe work environment, and if you don't have a place where you can go and be productive and feel good about the work that you're doing, we want to attract more folks and we want to retain the ones we have on each work site. And the only way we're going to do that is to make it better for the worker on that site.
So what's going on? Like, what's your What's your estimation of what's going on? It's a complicated issue. And I think in part, we've been able to put it to the side in construction and say, that's an issue for an employee who is at home. Like that's their own personal thing. But now it's gotten bad enough where it's costing contractors productivity, time, and money. And so what do you think's going on? Like, how do you put this all together? There's a lot of groups that call this a mental health crisis in construction. And the data that I've seen, and probably that you've seen as well, it sort of looks like that. So like, what the hell, like, how do you put this together?
Well, I think, number one, the data is there. I mean, it's showing that we are in a problem. If you go back a number of years in the boom, when there was tons of folks coming from the East Coast to come to the West Coast to work, there was lots of workers. Worker got sick, had an issue, maybe failed a drug and alcohol test. You just get another one. Send that one away, get another one. And they were just replaceable. Well, now you fast forward, post-COVID, there aren't any workers anymore. The workers that you have are the ones you need to maintain and you need to keep, and you need to keep them healthy. We have a shortage. Yeah. And what happened was when everything shut down through COVID, people found other ways and other means of making money. And sometimes it's not doing the trade they love. Some people realized that they needed help. They got some help, and now they don't want to go back to that industry because they may have become sick there, with addiction and usage. So I think at this point now we are standing up for our membership to say we need to keep them intact. We need to keep them whole. And we need to, like I said, retain the ones we have and recruit the new ones into a better work environment.
Do you think, okay, so you're in part saying that this has always been an issue. Maybe it's gotten worse or better over time, or there's seasons to it, but it's really hitting the industry now because you can't just replace people. There's not an influx. There's not an everflow of employees. So the economics of it all have really made people pay attention. Like that's, in absence of that, let's say we just had so many workers. Do you think we'd be talking about crisis? Would there be white papers about it? Like that's speculation, but it's interesting to me that the economics has really hit us now, and now we have to do something about it.
Yeah, I will agree with you. I think if we had 10,000 workers sitting on the bleachers ready to step in, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. We would just be disposable workers again, right? We're at the point now where we don't have that. So we have to talk about, change, doing things differently. We're not doing things exactly differently because we're still labeling, and the stigma on the sites of someone coming up and saying, I have a mental day.
Yeah.
But if I hurt my arm, no one even bats an eye at giving me the time off. Mental illness and physical illness are the same thing, right? You need the time to heal. You need the time to respond to any kind of treatment that you need or that you have available to you.
Where do we sit in terms of the stigma around mental health in the industry? Like it has to be better than it was 10 years ago. Like it has to be.
No, I think it's now in the forefront. And I think we had a conversation earlier this morning where you want to be in a position that maybe you're having a bad day at the work site and you want to walk up to your foreman and say, I'm just not mentally fit to work today. I don't believe I'm physically here. I'm able to do the job. I just mentally don't think I should be here and the statement was made, I might hurt someone or I might hurt myself or something might go wrong. The reaction is going to be, you're off the site. You're gone.
And that's punitive. It's
punitive. Yeah. And that is our problem, is it can't be the right response would be to get that person the time and the assistance they need to be back, be better, and be more productive. That's the right response.
From the manager, from the supervisor, from who?
From the worker, from the manager, from the owner, from the client. Everybody wins if that person gets back in the game, right? Because you've invested money in that person for training. You've got the best skilled person right there, they've taken it upon themselves to come up to you and to admit that they have an issue.
Is that happening though too? Like, are people saying that?
No, they all live the lie. The construction industry is full of lies. Living the dream. I'm living my best life. How you doing? Hey, everything's great. No, it's not.
Yeah.
But it's okay to not be okay. And that's what we're trying to say now.
Yeah. How's it resonating? Like, how's the pickup?
In some workplaces, it's still difficult. We have a large contractor group called the Association of Maintenance Contractors of Canada. They've embraced this. Their membership has embraced this. The owners of these contractors, they get it. They're realizing that they're losing folks. Some of those contractors have come to us, said, I've lost a couple of members to, a couple of workers to substance abuse. And lost, I mean, they've died.
Yeah.
They've overdosed.
Yeah.
And they can't afford, and it's not a financial thing, they can't afford the morale change in their work phase, right? To have this happen to a third person. So they are all in on this, on our Building Resiliency program, which is trying to change their work face so that they are more welcoming, more adaptive to be able to help these folks.
You're saying work face?
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What do you mean?
The workplace is, we just say the workplace. So in front of you right now, what you're on and, where you show up every day. Because some people's workplaces are not where they work. So, lots of remote work, lots of like people going up into, they're from the East Coast and they're working in Northern Alberta in a remote site camp. So you're away from your family, you're away from your friends, you're away from cutting the lawn and playing with the kids. And so there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And now you're in this small, camp room. Mind you, the camps are in great facilities nowadays from what they used to be. And you're far away. So you can't tell me that that's living your best life.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the line or the thing that people say, because no one wants to admit it. No one wants to get taken off site. No one wants to lose a day a day of pay. Mm-hmm. That's a bottom line.
We have I tell a story and it's a true life story. And it came through this program. I was contacted by this woman whose nephew was a welder, 26-year-old. His name is Logan. He has a name. He's a person. He'd had some substance abuse issues. Yeah. He'd been treated for it. He was in recovery. He was really doing well. And he was back on the tools. He was back welding. He had the world by the ass. Young kid, 26 years old, top of his field in welding, following his dad's footsteps, doing everything right? Had a hiccup, got fixed, in recovery, gets dispatched to a site, works on this site and realizes there's more drugs and alcohol going on in that site than he did in his worst place where he got sick. Yeah. Reaching out for help for his coworkers, texting them saying, look, I can't, I need some help here. I'm in recovery and I shouldn't be around this. And he was really, really reaching. Went to his foreman and said he needed a layoff. Foreman said, can't give you a layoff, need you on the job. I need every man, woman, child I could get on this site. We need to get this done. So if you want to lay off, you're going to quit. If you quit, you're done. You'll never be back. He gets a hold of his dispatch system and says, I need to get out of here. You need to replace me. I'm having trouble, and tells the story and everything. He said, I don't have anybody to replace you. You got to stay there. If you leave there, you're not getting dispatched here again. So he sucks it up. In the words of some of his coworkers, was head down, ass up, get to work. We're all going for beers after work. Let's all talk about it then. Mm-hmm. Right? Like the whole thing was wrong. 51 days from the date he was dispatched to the day they found him dead of an overdose. That was avoidable, 100% avoidable. But it was only avoidable if the workplace and the work face knew what to do. When he went to his coworkers to get help, they didn't know what to do. They couldn't help him. Went to his foreman. The foreman did nothing wrong. He needed to keep as much labor on that site to get the job done to please his bosses and to get the project done. He went to the hall that dispatched him. They didn't have anybody to replace him. They needed him to stay on site. Had they all been able to take a time out and get Logan the assistance he needed, maybe do a few changes, maybe have some of these discussions on the work site to tell everybody, we got a problem here and we got to deal with this thing, maybe Logan would be here. Second guessing. But, this young fellow lost his life because No one did anything wrong. They just didn't know what to do right.
Okay, I want to dig into the piece about the stigma specifically around opioids, because there's no more stigma in mental health than when it comes to substances. And we think that, I'm going to say society writ large, it's that person's fault. Like if they want to stop using, just stop taking the damn oxys, right? Like just stop. Like that's the attitude. And we have these like really shocking statistics all the time about like 3 people every day in Ontario get overdose on opioids. And like one of those is a construction worker. Like we just see ad nauseum these stats. And I think most people think, and I've been prey to this type of thinking, like, well, it's kind of their fault anyway. You know, like if that was cancer, it would just, like we would have we do have in our city, like the most state-of-the-art, massive, well-funded facilities to treat cancer, because it's not our fault. And it harms children, and it harms, our more vulnerable sectors of society. But substances, it's your fault. Like we still think about that. So how do you get through that? How do you get past that stigma? Because I bet I double that stigma in construction. I would say there's probably twice as much of that type of intensity of stigma in your industry.
Oh yeah. I mean, nobody wants to be that complainer or that kind of thing. And then when you talk about it, I just was on a mental health break motorcycle trip through Alaska and Yukon and just had a great time and all this stuff. But it was a couple of conversations regarding substance abuse came up, and it was exactly what you said. It was the easiest thing to say was, well, why do those people do that? Why don't they just stop? Mm-hmm. Well, how do you know it wasn't someone that got hurt on the job and the doctor prescribed the medicine?
Yeah.
And then they got hooked there. How do you know it just didn't start with, I mean, we hear stories all the time where, famous people, they got really good at drinking. So they wanted to try something else. So they got really good at cocaine, and then they try something else. And then they bought him out. Right. Mm-hmm. And yes, they got there, but it's that, I started my world as a bartender, creating all this problems. So here we are at the end trying to clean it up, before I fully retire. But I looked at it. I stared at it every day. I was serving people drinks that they probably shouldn't have been doing this, but this was their fun and enjoyment, and this was the way they entertained themselves. And then there's someone right beside them ordering a Coke, mm-hmm. Or 7-Up or something, and just having the same kind of good time. Yeah. But so having that answer where you blame the person, that's what creates a stigma. It's the blame, right? And like you said, if it was cancer, people would be, falling over themselves to sponsor something to help that person. But because it's an addictive thing and it's beyond many controls, it just gets lost in translation. I think that's our problem, is that we lie about something on the work site because you don't want to look weak. You don't want to look, you want to look like a tough guy or a tough gal or whatever on the site every day. You don't want to be that person. Coming back to a workplace that's not informed about how to deal with someone coming back. If like I said, I broke my arm and come back, everybody knows I'm going to come back, and I might have a little light duty because my arm may not be 100%. Mm-hmm. Coming back from mental illness and coming back to the site, it's not me you got to worry about. It's all my coworkers thinking I'm going to get an easy ride when I come back. And they're going to have to do more work to, look after me because I, smoked a little of this, or I failed a test, or, that kind of thing. Yeah. That's the problem.
In terms of opioid use, like I was thinking when you were chatting about how alcohol is such a part of the culture, and it's a part of a lot of cultures. I'm not going to say, oh, this is just a part of construction culture. It's a part of like work culture. Like, hey, let's go for drinks after. Mm-hmm. And this I don't know, but I've always wondered, is opioid use or like taking painkillers, is that becoming a part of the culture? Or is it more like behind closed doors?
It's a prescribed item most of the time, right? It's like guys are taking these, Advils or taking Tylenol because you got a little pain. So you take a little of that and then it doesn't work anymore. So you go to the doctor and they give you something a little stronger and a little stronger. Next thing you know,
it's been medicalized.
It has been, and it really has. And so in Alberta with the drug and alcohol testing, they're testing for all of this stuff too, right? That you can still go on a site with your medication, but you've got to be within a window of that. You can't be taking 5 of them. You got to be taking 1 of them. That's what the prescription says.
Like opioid-based painkillers?
Sure. And, like this misconception that opioid is the number one, killer, like in British Columbia, where they're saying that if you're a construction worker, you got a bigger chance of being an addict and die from an overdose. Because of the opioid crisis. Well, there's a huge study in British Columbia that came out through Simon Fraser that was one of the largest studies in its time, and it shows that alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine are still 1, 2, and 3
in terms of usage.
In terms of usage, the other skewed data is that your CRA recognizes people based on a $500 income. Your career or your business is if you make $500 in a specific thing, that's what you are. Well, you go to Vancouver with all the major construction downtown. You have a lot of folks on the street, homeless, that are sweeping up sites and being paid by contractors to sweep up. They're now construction workers.
So you think some of that construction opioid data is a bit misrepresented?
Yes.
We're including people who are displaced, chronic, severe mental health issues, and might get a side gig as construction. We're including them in this data.
Yeah, and I have a young son. He's a tradesperson, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I look at families today saying, why do we have a shortage of tradespeople? Is because of the optics of things like British Columbia, safe supply and harm reduction use is basically, my kid's going to get into the trade, they're become an addict, and then they're going to die.
I see.
I don't want him to be a tradesman. They can be something else.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so you're trying to do something about this, and my initial question sort of still stands. The union is interested in this because they are incented and they care about the well-being of the employee group. And this is not a small group of people. We're talking 60,000 people.
Plus their families. Our Building Resiliency program is a family unit program. So it may not just be the 60,000 members. It may be their partners, their kids can all take part in our program because it's a family issue, right? It's a family unit, and you need support of your closest people when you have this kind of, support. You need the support of your family. You need the support of whether it's your immediate family or your extended family or your work family. And that's where the Building Resiliency program comes in, is trying to educate employers to be informed, have a recovery informed or ready workplace, have workers recognize. We do a course through Queen's University. It's a certificate course through Queen's. It's a partnership with Bell Canada Mental Health and TELUS Health, and it's a great course. We've trained over 70 odd peers. So people that recognize, and part of the training is how to deal with the coworkers on a return to work, how to recognize people coming back to work, how to get people to recognize the folks in recovery that won't come back to the workplace, but to bring them back by maybe they'll take a shot because they're now informed, they'll take care of me. We're not saying huge accommodation. We're saying just to be recognize that people in recovery, there's a very large pool of people out there in recovery that need to know they're recognized. And
is that where you started, by trying to destigmatize and improve the interaction when people come back from a leave?
Yeah, it is hard for them to come back, and some of them don't come back. That's where a shortage comes from.
And your thought here is in part because of the stigma, they don't come back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is it. We have to reduce that stigma, right, of people coming back. Because like I've said, physical injury and a mental health injury is the same result. You're off work.
Yeah.
You need to come back. You need to return to work.
And you sort of have to fix and I don't know how to fix that, but this person's getting an easy ride. They were on mental health leave. You have to fix that thinking somehow. You have to fix that mentality somehow. And it sounds like that's what you're on a mission to do.
Yeah, and that's what we are doing. We actually had a lot of folks that have taken our training and said, I had no idea. I have a responsibility as a supervisor or as a worker, to co-worker, to support that worker returning.
Yeah.
And to give them as much support and as much, recognition as possible to keep them on the job, because that does make their job easier, right? They're not going to get more work because Ian's coming back.
Yeah.
They're going to have more duties to assign, right? So, and having people in a hostile work environment is as toxic as it gets, right?
Yeah.
People know that you get into these environments where there's infighting and people are just, oh, that's Chuck, he's lazy.
Yeah.
He doesn't do this or he doesn't do that or he doesn't want to do this or, Sally shows up late and leaves early. Those kind of things, right? That is a toxic work environment. I mean, having somebody that's management's job to manage that workplace, right? And to get on there and its coworkers to step up and to be able to speak out. And I think the whole psychological safe workplace is that being able to speak up in your workplace without repercussions, without punitive, without, no judgment, and destigmatize the fact that someone says, we were working on that scaffolding. It was kind of sketchy. Instead of just going up there and taking my chances.
Yeah.
That's what's happening today. People are just taking their chances.
Are there people who think like, they're getting too soft? Like there's too many allowances or like we're never getting any work done? Like, is that that has to be part of the mentality because it's a tough mentality. And part of it, I think, is because the environment they work in, they meaning construction workers who work outside when it's minus 40. The environment is so hard. You need to harden yourself to survive and thrive in that environment. So I don't know, are there managers or supervisors or employees who are like, we're getting way too soft. Like we've gone too far. The pendulum swung too far with this mental health stuff. Have you heard that?
Well, there always is. I mean, there's always people that are going to complain about change, right? Complain about this and they want to be the tough one on the block. I think the toughest person on the block is one who stands up and speaks up for themselves. Someone that actually says, I'm not okay today, guys, and I don't want to jeopardize any of you, so I'm going to step out for the day, right? That's the hero I want to work with. Mm-hmm. Because if I go to work, I want to know that the person working beside me is heads in the game, and together we're going to be so productive that the employer has no alternative but to give us more money. Right? There's a financial issue here, right? Yeah. And there's a thing here. More productivity equals safer, more productive workplace. It gets stuff done a little quicker. It releases some, the costs of safety issues, lost time, things like that. Yeah. And so, I always say to the owners, I said, so if I think we can give you more productivity and you can make more money, will you share a little bit in bargaining with me? Right? Let's be honest. There's got to be a hook for everybody. Yeah. So we all get in, and there is. I think there's something within the whole workplace. If you change, and you get more productive, you get a safer, more money. Simple.
Is there? I've often wondered about the fitness for duty piece of this, and like how many folks are showing up hungover to work, and I wondered. This might be really ignorant to even ask, but I wondered if if we didn't include anyone who's hungover in the workplace, would we have enough people to work? Would it be a third of the workforce that is hungover from taking painkillers the night before or even that morning, or they had 7 beer the night before? If we eliminated everyone who wasn't 100% clear-minded, would we still have a critical mass of workforce? And the reason I ask is because I think sometimes managers, supervisors, maybe they don't want to know if they're totally fit for duty. If they look fit, hey, you're standing upright, away you go.
Well, that's the old, can you fog up a mirror? Go to work, right? I mean, that's the old adage, right? Yeah. I think you're right. I think that through this whole process, we're not experts at all. We're dealing with experts. We're following the data, we're following the doctor's advices, we're following all this stuff. And I think you're right. I think it's if you did turn around and say that the difference between intoxication and impairment, they're two different things. Yeah. And through my time on this project, I've learned that they're two different things. I always thought if you were liquored up, you were done. Yeah. You're not only, they always say you're impaired driving or you're intoxicated. It's the same thing. Why do they say two different things? Well, I learned through this process that you may be intoxicated Saturday night, ripping it up, but on Monday morning, are you impaired? Yeah. Are you able to deal with the change? Your muscle memory says you get in a crane, you spin this button, you do this little knob, and the crane goes up, the crane goes down, someone loads it, they tell you to lift, you do your lift, you're done. You can do that. What if something goes wrong? Mm-hmm. Have you got the mental capacity to deal with that? That's impairment. Yeah. And that's what we're a problem. That is the problem. You don't want a crane operator off, their head not in the game. Yeah. They're overhead of many workers. And you've heard of the tragic accidents that's happened in BC, a young woman that was just killed with a load dropping. Yeah. how do you fix that? You've got to make sure that people are able to step up and step out.
Yeah.
And I think the fact that we deal in Alberta with the really strong drug and alcohol programs and testing and things like that, and then you've got folks in British Columbia right next door that are on safe supply and harm reduction. They're two counter
That's
things.
interesting. Okay, so there's a more like conservative regulatory body in Alberta around substance use. Conservative meaning less liberal. We deal with this as psychiatrists and mental health. The Mental Health Act in Alberta is more stringent, and we have more ability to certify people when we think they're unwell as psychiatrists. In BC, you have less ability to do that. Okay. And what I would say is the drug and alcohol policies in British Columbia are just more liberal, or there's more allowances, there's more harm reduction. So that's showing up in the workplace too, because they're right next door.
Well, we have a whole group of young folks coming forward that are coming up in an era where marijuana use is legal.
Yeah.
It's just like we all came up with liquor, and our dads and our moms were having a beer after work, or having a drink after work. And it wasn't a bad thing, a little, small bottles of beer, and they were drinking, and alcohol was an accepted practice. And guys were getting rip roaring one night and showing up for work hungover the next day, totally impaired, but it was acceptable. It's not. So now we've got this, you fast forward to this whole atmosphere of new people coming in saying, well, but marijuana is okay. Like sure. it's not a bad thing. But marijuana stays in your system for so long that you're going to trigger a test result, and you're going to get disciplined, and you're going to lose your job, and you're going to, be labeled, and you're going to have to go into treatment, even though you're just a casual smoker. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's legal. But you can't drive around with an open bottle of liquor in your car beside a cop. Just like you can't smoke beside a cop. It is legal, but it's how you use it and how you work.
Okay, so this building resiliency program, I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because you said we're really starting with trying to destigmatize people coming back from work, open up that environment. We know it's an issue. We're trying to get more people back in the workplace in a healthy way. What other things are you doing with the program? I think a lot of our listeners, especially in construction, will be interested to know what sorts of things you're doing, because there's a lot of groups that are struggling with this. Well, like all construction companies, unions are struggling with this. It's very clear. And something I heard the other day with a conversation I had with one of our partners, they said, we set out, when we built our mental health strategy, we set out with a couple of goals. Don't just do anything. Don't do everything, but do something. And I kind of like that. And so take us through a little bit more of the in-depth, because I think our listeners will want to know what you've done and what you're planning to do with this program.
Well, we set up a microsite off the bta.ca website called Building Resiliency. You can go on that site. We've partnered up with TELUS Health. We've partnered up with Adversity. Yeah. And you're our newest group that's in, and we're really excited about that. We have Breaking Free, which is a substance abuse and maintenance a support group. And so it's an app. You have to sign up for it, and then you can use the app. And at 2:00 in the morning, when there's no one around to talk to, you've got Breaking Free to talk to, and it deals with all kinds of substances. So I myself signed up for one and just put it under just shits and giggles. I put it in under tobacco because I used to be a smoker. Yeah. And it walked me through the whole thing. It's just a great support. It really supports you for not smoking, not lighting that cigarette, not doing it, and taking a breath and doing some exercises. We've got the peer support program through Building Resiliency, where we believe that on every job site, a job steward's the first dispatched out there. The second person should be a peer person that's there to help represent the worker with management, and management with the worker, to make sure that everybody's mentally sound and safe to work. We've, with the Breaking Free has been really a good program. the adversity ad is just put us over the top. Like we're, I'm not just saying that kind of stuff. We've got a lot of folks that have tried it, that have liked it. We just got to get the word out. We've got to get more publicity on this. We've got more owners jumping on and contractors that are coming in for the certificate training through Queen's.
Cool.
And I always joke saying it's a no-brainer. It's a freebie course. The government of Alberta has graciously sponsored this whole program. This will be 3 years. We're on our third year now. The Queen's University program is just a real good thing. It takes a little bit of your time, 3 modules and a full 1 day, but it's all done remotely.
Yeah.
And you get a certificate, so you can go home and show your mom that you're a graduate of Queen's.
Yeah.
What the hell? Everybody gets a piece of paper. So
Nice.
we're thrilled about that. And the people who come out of that, they all want to do something on their workplace like the next day. So
they're motivated to try and take action
to get in there. I mean, having these peers out there, they're all jumping at it right now. So we're just looking at the next step. And so we want to bring those 70 plus peers that we've trained through Queen's, and we want to do a full adversity deep dive.
Yeah.
So they have those tools to work on the work site. And it's just, it's been changing for a number of people.
Yeah.
Like some people are willing to come back. The contractors have jumped on this thing because they realize they have a problem on their sites. And there's a window. And like I said, the government of Alberta, right out of the blue, came out and sponsored us for 2 year. And then when we thought the 2 years was coming to an end and we'd done what we could do, they called for a meeting and surprised us by saying, how do you extend this program? How do you expand it? So,
nice.
The government's full supportive here in Alberta, and they are a big recovery province.
Yeah.
We say that is like, you can see all the stuff Alberta's doing in recovery to recognize folks in recovery, to bring people out in recovery, to get people back to work in recovery. Yeah. Everything's recovery. Not a lot of user stuff. Go to BC, everything's user. Not a lot of recovery.
Interesting.
We could get those two people to kind of mix like a Reese's peanut butter cup.
Yeah.
And we could blend them together and get recognition for both. We think there's a lane in BC for recovery as well as harm reduction. And we believe there's a recognition here and room here to recognize the fact that there are still people that are using that need support to get into the recovery stages.
Yeah. And I imagine that the government's main mandate is like it's, from a cost perspective, super expensive, this whole crisis. And then also the labor force is being reduced when you're taking people out because of death or suicide or a mental injury. Like it's massively constraining to a workforce that we need.
Yeah, and they are recognizing that. I mean, they've put a program on if you want to come into, in a construction or come in and take over in the trades in Alberta, there's a $5,000 stipend, the tax savings for coming in and moving into Alberta and coming and bringing your expertise here. Well, if you're a person from Ontario or from out east that wants to come to Alberta, once upon a time, there was an Alberta Advantage, right? So, and that was the money, the double time weekends, like endless.
Yeah.
And we just had such an influx. Now they're actually begging people to come here to work, right? So where's that advantage now, right? But bringing people back who've gone to maybe flip burgers instead of welding because when they were welding, they got sick.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to bring them back and we need to give them a place that's safe for them to return. So it is important to us to get those folks, but it's also important to keep our current workplace safe.
Yeah.
And keep people engaged and retain those workers.
Well, hey, I appreciate the work you're doing here. It's needed. We need champions in this space. I've had so many conversations with people about like, what do we do in this industry? Because a lot of my patients too are in construction and, this whole, like Alberta's a very industry heavy part of the world, right? So my clinical work has been with a lot of people in construction. So yeah, I'm happy that you're doing this work and telling folks on the show about what you're doing as best practice. So let's stay updated and like keep our listeners updated as to how the program's going and what evidence is coming from it, because we're going to need to continue to push this agenda and learn from each other. So thanks for coming on the show to chat about it.
Well, thanks for the time. And like I say, get on the website, bta.ca, check out the Building Resiliency Program. sign up. All the secret passwords are there. So, and it's free for the using. That's not free. It's compliments of the Alberta government and the Building Trades of Alberta.
Awesome. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate the conversation.
Thanks for your time.